Well, I guess you can't make this up. Terapagos and Ho-Oh just won the first big online tournament for Regulation I. So, as you guys can see here, we had a pretty decent sized event today. I believe this is the first big tournament we've had so far that has finished, at least over here on Limitless. This was a 80-player tournament almost. And Terapagos Ho-Oh went on to win the whole thing, which is absolutely crazy because, again, a couple days ago, you know, I did a little list talking about these mons. I said I thought Pagos was pretty bad. I said I thought Ho-Oh was pretty decent. Since then, I don't necessarily think I'm correct about Ho-Oh. I think like it definitely has its matchups. Not a fantastic mon. But Terapagos is a mon I've been seeing quite a lot of people talk about because a lot of people think it actually gets a bit better in this metagame. And funny enough here, this is an 80-person online tournament. And it went on to not only win it, but it was both of them were, sorry, there's two of them in the top 8. Now, before we jump into this event, right, so this is the first major event basically that has finished over this weekend. But we do also have the Victory Road Challenge going on right now. I believe at the time of recording this, day 2 is probably starting in about 3 hours. I think it starts roughly around the same time this video is going to go up, just to, I guess, put it into perspective there. But this is a much bigger online tournament that we will be talking about tomorrow. As we can see here on Victory Road's Twitter, yesterday they announced that there was at least 250 players signed up for it. So that is also going to be a massive event. So if you guys want to see what happened there, make sure you, hit the subscribe button. Stick around for tomorrow as we will, obviously go into that. But today, we're talking about the Wide League event because I think it's just really interesting, right? You look at the stats here. Again, you see two Terapagos is not only in the top 8, but in the top 2, which is absolutely crazy. Both of which, on pretty different teams. One here is a Ho-Oh team, another is a Groudon team. So yeah, really, really interesting. But yeah, we'll jump into, the UC stats here. We'll take a look at some of these teams. Basically just break it all down for you guys and just give you guys my opinions on everything that happened. So to kick us off though, we will jump over to Lab Mouse here. Shout out to these guys. Honestly, they do some fantastic work, honestly. But here we have actually filtered the teams to the top 8, and we can actually see all of the Pokemon that we used here in the top 8, which is pretty damn cool, right? Especially when you start looking at restricted, right? CSR here does take first place as the only restricted to get 3 placements. We see Terapagos here with 2, obviously winning the event and coming second, which is really, really cool. 2 Zamas here, we've got 2 Miraidons, we have 2 Koraidons, we have 1 Ho-Oh, we have a Kyogre and a Zacian, and I believe there is 1 Groudon at the bottom here, which we can see. Yeah, lovely. So, honestly, a pretty good assortment of restricteds there. I believe that's 10 different, if my math was correct. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Apparently, I can't count. I will say the big thing I noticed here as well when we go back here is no Lunala. Lunala was definitely a mon I expected to do pretty good at this event. But if we have a look here, the only one, we have 1, is that... Oh, sorry, there are 2 in top 16. So yeah, I guess 2 in top 16 is still pretty damn impressive. But I'm definitely surprised that mon in particular did not actually place a bit higher in this event. So, quickly going back to the UC stats, something to keep in mind here, Rillaboom was the best performing mon on the day, at least in terms of, the Lab Mouse stats here. Obviously, it was one of the most used mons in the event. It had the best win rate out of the bunch. One other interesting thing I did kind of pick up as well, which is something I've been talking about to some friends, behind the scenes, and I think I mentioned it in a video the other day as well, is Urshi Rapid here, was used 3 times for a 36% win rate. Not very good. But Single Strike Shifu, on the other hand, it was, picked twice. It had a 77% or almost 78%, which is definitely very, very crazy. And I do expect to see this mon rise up quite a bit. Anyway, let's jump into some of these teams. So, first of all, let's look at this team here. This is the Japanese Terapagos Ho-Oh team. Super, super interesting. Of course, we look at the Terapagos here. This is not Calm Mind, which I did find, like, really, really interesting originally when I looked at it. But my guess is, like, they had to be going for some stall strats, right? Like when you kind of look at how these teams built, of course, you do have some instant offense. Obviously, Sacred Fire does a bit of damage. Brave Bird as well from Ho-Oh is quite strong. Obviously we have the Urshifu here with, just really strong stab moves, right? Wicked Blow, Close Combat from this thing do a lot of damage. Of course, Rillaboom in terrain can deal a lot of damage with its Wood Hammers. Toxapex basically does no damage, but between Toxic Spikes and Infestation, it can actually be very, very annoying. Especially with Baneful Bunker as well, right? Spreading the poison. And of course, Fluttermane. This is, looks like a more supportive set, of course, with Thunderwave and Icy Wind, but with Terra Normal, very good into Calyrex-Shadow Rider. And in particular, this one, even without much investment, its, its Moonblast still, they still kind of slap. That one has 135 base special attack, so even with minimal investment, the mon is still pretty damn good. Yeah, this is just, it's a really, really interesting team, right? Because you've got a Terapagos that doesn't want to set up. You have a Ho-Oh that, it doesn't have Clear Amulet, doesn't have Life Orb, Choice Band, or anything like that. Of course, with the Citrus Berry and Regenerator, it can sit around for a very, very long time. But my guess is, honestly, this team is, it's probably out there trying to get, the poisons and the burns off. and then using things like leftovers and, of course, grassy terrains to keep the Terapagos alive, slowly chip things down into an end game where things like Urshifu and Fluttermane can clean up. So, very, very interesting team here. I'll definitely have to have a look if I can see any games from this player, because this is a really interesting team, and I'm honestly shocked at one. You know, if I showed you this team, I would have, you know, sorry, if someone had showed me this team, I would have been like, oh yeah, like maybe it's okay. It's probably not that great, but clearly this player piloted it fantastically, and yeah, had some incredible results. So shout outs there, of course. You know, very, very good to see. Then we have Mr. Awesome here, you know, running a different variant here of Terapagos. Of course, this here is the Calm Mind stuff. Now, I did see a lot of people talking about Flamethrower Terapagos. It's kind of like very similar to Earth Power in a sense, right? It gives you a way to hit things like Steel types. Of course, you don't have the option to hit the Rock types, but realistically, like, what Rock type in the format is there outside of, like, you know, Ogerpon Cornerstone? In saying that, I have actually seen Sand pick up quite a bit, at least in the best of one ladder. I think Tita, in particular, Terra Ghost, does have a pretty solid matchup into things like Calyrex-Shadow, and of course into Zamazenta. Reason for that is because, you know, with the Terra Ghost, with the Assault Vest, as long as you Terra Ghost, you are going to be able to live anything that the Calyrex can throw at you. And of course, you know, you kind of hard wall out the Zamazentas. And with Knockoff plus Sandchip, you are able to pick up the Calyrex-Shadow Riders right now, which, at least on best of one ladder, like, all the ones I'm seeing, for the most part, all focus Sash. I'm sure we'll still see Specs and, of course, Life Orb and, you know, some other items thrown in there. But yeah, I have seen Tita rising up just because of that, so definitely something worth keeping in mind there. But yeah, this is just, you know, a Calm Mind to attack set. It's paired up with Groudon running a pretty standard set here, of course, the Clear Amulet stuff. This is what we've basically seen for the past year that this mon's been run. And then you just have a very good balance core, right? So you've got like this really good offensive mode where Groudon Raging Bolt can, you know, do a lot of instant damage. Of course, this is a boost energy Terra Electric Raging Bolt. And then you just got this balance core where, you know, you've got screens, right? You can get the Terapagos behind screens. You can cycle in your Incineroar and your Mungus and really, you know, screw with the opponent. And then, of course, you've got this other offensive mode. And on top of that as well, Groudon's a mon that also really enjoys sitting behind screens as well, right? It's a mon that it's not super bulky, but it does have enough bulk to, you know, kind of get some stuff done. So really cool to see there. But yeah, just another really interesting take on Terapagos, to be honest. It's very, very interesting, especially to see this mon, you know, not only get, you know, top 1 and top 2 in this event, but I think to have a combined record of like 18 and 4, also pretty damn insane. But yeah, other than that, it is a pretty standard team. It looks like what I would kind of expect most Groudon teams to look like, right? Where, you know, you've got this balance mode with Incineroar, Incin and Mungus. Of course, Groudon is there as, you know, the main Sunsetter. Raging Bolt, a fantastic partner. Really helped out into matchups like Kyogre, of course. And Grimmsnarl is just honestly going to be one of the best mons in this format, guys. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I do think Grimmsnarl is going to be a massive threat. You know, when you talk about a metagame where, you know, almost every game people are going to be bringing 2 restricteds, right? These are mods with enormous stats. Their offensive stats are really high, so having, you know, things like Reflect and, of course, Light Screen is fantastic there because, you know, you're kind of mitigating their, you know, huge stats. But then on top of that as well, you've got your own restricted, once again, with huge stats. So buffing up their defensive stats obviously goes a lot further than if you buff up a mon, you know, who doesn't have the best bulk, right? You know, you think about, for example, a Groudon and a Urshifu behind screens, right? You know, the physical bulk's pretty similar, but of course, Groudon has much better special bulk. And because of that, behind a light screen, its effective HP just, you know, it skyrockets, right? So, yeah, definitely keep an eye on Grimmsnarl, as I do expect this mon to continue to rise up. But let's have a look what else we have. So, here's an interesting team here as well. I do believe this guy was 9-0 going into top 4 before he took his first L. But this is a very similar team to what I kind of, you know, was predicting we would see, right? This is, you know, for all intents and purposes, this is the Arabega 6, right? You swapped out, you know, one of your mons being the Whimsicott here for the Calyrex Ice Rider. And then, of course, you just switched your Urshi from Rapid to Single Strike. Now, this core, of course, is fantastic, right? Miraidon is a very, very good Pokemon. You pair it up with support like Fake Out from Iron Hands, Priority Brock on the Giraffe, of course, and, of course, Ogerpon here, you know, with a bit of, you know, Follow Me action, Helping Hand as well. And it just really enables the Miraidon to kind of do what it needs to. And then, of course, you have this really strong Trick Room mode where Ice Rider, Giraffe, and Iron Hands are all very, very good there. Very interesting to see the Imprisoned Trick Room, of course. Honestly, not bad. Like, you know, you can lead, obviously, Giraffe, Miraidon into some of these more hyper-offensive teams. You know, if they lead, you know, for example, their own Calyrex, right? And, you know, you're worried that they'll potentially set up a Trick Room. You imprison it, you know, and you feel pretty damn good there. But yeah, just look, it's a really consistent team. We've basically seen what this can do in the past, right? Urshi Single Strike, I do think was a fantastic adaptation on this team. Again, into the current metagame, I think it's going to be really good. There are a lot of Terra Waters running around, Terra Grasses running around. And because of that, I do think Urshi Single Strike, you know, its usage just kind of rises up. And also the ability to deal massive damage with Terra Dark, Wicked Blow. is never a bad thing, because I do expect to see things even like Terra and Miraidon drop off. It's one of those interesting ones where, you know, with Zacian getting a lot of play, and again, we kind of saw it, right? I think there was like 4 or 5 Zacians in top 16. And Zacian's the one that naturally has a really good matchup into this, right? If they don't Terra, you know, you can play her off, one-shot them. And if you Terra early, or, you know, they predict the Terra, the Behemoth Blade will just one-shot you through Terra Fairy. And because of that, we are seeing Terra Electric rise up again. But of course, Terra Fairy is still pretty damn solid. So the next one here is our first CSR Zama. Now, this is basically what I've seen everywhere on ladder. This is very close to the standard set we are seeing, right? So we have Qian Pao here, basically running just, you know, the set it's run for a very long time. Except for Crunch. I am really curious why it's Crunch over Throat Chop. Of course, Throat Chop, you know, helps out into things that want to click, you know, moves like Parting Shot, for example, and Incineroars. Of course, as well, there's also other options like Hyper Voices coming out of Blood Moon, Ursalunas, and whatnot. So the Crunch, definitely an interesting tech there. But regardless, you know, Crunch, Throat Chop does the same damage. Urshifu Rapid Strike with the Choice Scarf, very, very good into the Calyrex mirrors, especially the balance stuff. Having a one that can outspeed it and potentially one-shot it with Terra Water. Surgy Strikes is, of course, very, very good. Zamazenta here, opting for Terra Ghost. This is an interesting one. Like, I do expect to see Ghost, you know, kind of rise up a bit, because with Wide Guard, you don't really care that much about opposing Cali Shadows. But one thing I will mention here is they have opted for Heavy Slam over Imprison. I'm definitely curious to see where the game goes with this. I was personally testing out almost this exact same team earlier today. I just had a Moongus over Rillaboom. And I will say, Imprison won me a lot of games, because you just get into the mirrors, you just imprison them, and then you sit there spamming Wide Guard. The Cali Shadow can't do anything, and the Zamazenta can't do anything, and it was really, really funny. But yeah, look, outside of that, this team, it's pretty standard, right? Of course, you got the Focus Sash over on the Qian Pao. Because of that, you have the Life Orb here on the Cali. I do think Substitute in this current metagame is very, very good. And of course, as well, when you have things like Rillaboom and the Incineroar to, you know, kind of support you, help you heal up a bit with the grassy terrain. It is very, very good. But yeah, this is a very, very standard team. This is definitely something I expect to see a lot going forward from the Calyrex and Zamazenta teams. So the team here in 5th is a Groudon Cali Shadow team. Now, this is really interesting for a couple of reasons, right? Because one, we did see both Groudon and Cali Shadow picking up quite a bit with Wheezing towards the end of Regulation G. Big reason for that is, like, one, Calyrex's ability just doesn't care about neutralizing gas. Really, really dumb if you ask me. And then two, Groudon with Ability Shield was just really, really good, especially on a lot of those Dondozo teams where you're able to get up things like the Toxic Spikes, you know, you chip them down a little bit, and then eventually you just win the game by picking up everything when they're sitting at about 60-70%, right? Of course, this team here doesn't have Dondozo, but what it does have is an incredibly potent Sun mode. So, you know, there is a mode where you can say, hey, I'm going Groudon, Cali Shadow, Chiyu, and Fluttermane, and I'm just going to run through stuff, right? Terra Normal obviously gives you a really good matchup into the mirror. Of course, as well, you do have Life Orb, Terra Normal. Just a lot of damage coming out of this thing. I'm assuming it's Speed Booster. And of course, when you have Chiyu as well with Beads of Ruin, it's a very, very nice decombo. Chiyu, another mon as well in Sun, is fantastic. Iron Hands is just one of the best mons for Trick Room matchups, right? You bring this thing into any Arabega looking team where, you know, you can outspeed it, especially when you have things like Wheezing threatening their speed control options. And then, yeah, you know, they get a Cali Shadow, sorry, a Cali Ice under Trick Room, for example. Your low kick does stupid amounts of damage. So, look, this is a really, really cool team. Something I personally actually do want to test out myself, and I might steal this paste and actually do some testing out a little bit later tonight. But yeah, a really, really cool take on the team. Very hyper offensive. And honestly, Wheezing right now, I do think is a fantastic mon, especially when you think about Toxic Spikes with the other 5 mons on this team, right? This is a mon where, you know, if you can get some poisons down, you chip things down to 70-80%, all of a sudden, a Chiyu, a Fluttermane in Sun start doing stupid amounts of damage. Of course, Cali Shadow is a mon where, you know, you don't want to let that thing chip you, man. Any chip, and all of a sudden, Cali Shadow will just run through you. So, yeah, this is a really, really sick team. Then we have another Cali Zama team here. Now, this team here is pretty interesting, right? Because, again, you've got this standard, you know, Fire, Water, Grass stuff where you got the Incin, Amoonguss, and Rillaboom on this variant. Again, you know, we spoke about the Shadow, the Urshi Rapid Sword with Choice Scarf. Very, very good into the mirror. This team does not have a Focus Sash, I do think is important to note. But of course, Cali Shadow here is Terra Normal. I would say this is probably like the one Terra you want to run if you're not going to run Sash, because like with Terra Normal, you don't care that much about Astral Barrage, so your opponent has to make a read with things like Psychic or Expending Force. And because of that, like, you're still going to live one shot anyway, where like if you Terra Ghost, then you want the Sash because you're just going to get bopped anyway, right? We do have the Terra Water Zami here. Again, no Imprison. Like, I don't know if I'm crazy. Like, maybe I'm the one over, you know, looking this, but Heavy Slam, Body Press, Wide Guard, just very, very consistent. Another Rocky Helmet Incin as well. Important to note here, I do think Incin is very, very good with Rocky Helmet in this current metagame, especially because, you know, when you look at a lot of the mons that you want to pair with it, the Assault Vest is normally taken. And right now, like, this team has double grass, right? So it doesn't really need the goggles, especially when you do have Terra Grass Incin. But yeah, it's still really interesting to note that a lot of them are opting for Helmet right now, especially as I kind of do expect Rapid Strike to drop a little bit in usage. I don't expect it to be anything crazy by any means. But yeah, you know, it was the one that was hitting, I think, like 62% usage at the end of Regulation G. So I do kind of expect that to drop just a little bit. Then we have Whimsicott here, pretty standard stuff. They did opt for Protect over Light Screen, which I do think is kind of interesting, but I'm sure they have their reasons. And then Amoonguss running a pretty standard set here with Protect and Sludge Bomb. We have seen a bit of Pollen Puff, but I'm assuming on this team they just want to, you know, make sure they can get damage down into some of those Terra Fairies that can really plague the Zamazenta in particular. Now, the 7th place team here is a really interesting team because I've personally been looking at something pretty similar myself, which is Groudon paired up with Discharge Terra Electric Miraidon. Now, I will say Helping Hand is absolutely stupid. I played a game the other day where my Miraidon was Choice Scarf, and a Helping Hand Terra Electric Discharge one-shot a Clefairy, which I thought was really interesting because that mon does actually have a bit of special defense with the Eviolite. But yeah, like, this is Choice Specs too, so if you have the speed control, this thing's going to absolutely slap. I will say as well, the Hisuian Ligand is very, very interesting here, especially with the Sleep Powder After Use stuff. Could be very, very annoying on this team. You have a very defensive Fluttermane with Terra Grass as well. You know, pretty standard stuff here, just the Moonblast, Icy Wind Taunt. Of course, the Scarf Chiyu, the Goat. This is your Calyrex-Shadow Answer. Also a mon that is very, very good into Zamazenta. It's like, it's one of those mons, especially into like, you know, the Zamazenta and the Calyrex-Shadow, right? Where it's like, you have to, like, play the mind game. It's like, oh crap, you know, he's gonna snarl me. Do I Wide Guard? Is he gonna Dark Pulse my Cali? Maybe I Protect it. Maybe I Terror it. All of a sudden, you know, maybe you think too much about the Calyrex-Shadow. Next thing you know, your Zamazenta just ate an overheat and got one shot. So yeah, a very, very good mon. Awesome to see it get some play here. And then Giraffe. Honestly, I was testing Miraidon without Giraffe today. I've been one of Giraffe's biggest haters for a while. I've played it with Miraidon on this like entire format, and I actually do think Miraidon needs the Giraffe. The Electric Seed set is just way too good. I think if you're playing Lunala, like, maybe you can get away without it. But if you aren't playing Lunala, I think Giraffe is awesome on this team. But really, this core here of Groudon and Miraidon, I think, is just fantastic. The Terra Electric Discharge stuff is insane. And then, yeah, look, you put the Fluttermane, you put the Chiyu on here, and you're going to have a good day. Yeah, just very, very cool offensive team here. I will say, having Sleep Powder, Precipice Blades, and Heat Wave all in the same team kind of makes me nervous. But, and I mean, on top of that, Drake Meteor as well. So, yeah, this team definitely has a lot of moves that can miss. But really cool to see it get results. You know, I am kind of a believer in Groudon. Like, I believe if this mon, if Precipice Blades was just like 100 base power, 100 accuracy, I think this would be a fantastic mon. But like, yeah, like, it's 120 base power, but 85 accuracy. It feels so bad, man. You know, Groudon needs like the Calyrex-Shadow treatment, man. Give it like 120 base power, P Blades that can't miss. And then, you know what, while you're at it, like, let it get buffed by Sun or some crap, dude. Honestly, if Calyrex-Shadow can do it, why can't Groudon? And then to round out the top 8 here, we have our first Swordfish. Now, I, again, was testing something very, very similar to this the other day. I do expect this to be kind of the standard, I guess, for the Swordfish going forward, right? I will say I did play Substitute, and I really enjoyed it, but I definitely see why you would want Sacred Sword on this mon. Very, very good into things like Zamazenta, especially when you have Chen Pao. I do think that is very, very good. And Terra Stella, honestly, on this mon is not a bad shout either, because you have 3 very powerful moves. With Terra Stella as well, I believe with Sword of Ruin, you probably just pick up Zama if they don't Terra as well. Very, very important to note here. But yeah, this team is sick, man. It's very, very standard. I expect this to be probably the 6 you see going forward. I'm sure there'll be some people who swap Rillaboom out for, of course, Amoonguss on these teams just to give you a bit of a better matchup into Trick Room. But honestly, this team's Trick Room matchup isn't even that bad. Between Kyogre, Rillaboom, and, of course, Zacian, you know, you have, 3 pretty bulky mons. You have Fake Out support, you can protect. And yeah, you can definitely eat a lot of hits, like, especially when you look at, like, a lot of the Trick Room mons right now, right? You're talking about, Groudon Lunala, right? Rillaboom can kind of switch it on both of them. It switches into the P-Blades. It gets you Fake Out, right? Allows you to control the terrain. Of course, Kyogre as well into things like Groudon, and Kali Ice is also pretty solid. And Zacian, again, as long as it's not getting hit by like a Groudon under Trick Room, it's honestly fine. And again, that's where like Protect plus Rillaboom can come in. Of course, a Focus Sash Chen Pao as well, also very, very good into those teams. But yeah, I expect this to be a pretty standard 6 going forward, especially for the Swordfish. So with the top 8 done, I do kind of briefly want to touch on the top 16 here. I won't go like too like in depth on it because, again, it's the first event of the basically the first big-ish event. I'll probably definitely spend a bit more time tomorrow going over VR as well. But I'll kind of just touch on the cool things here. So we have, I believe, a Korean player playing Clef plus Regieleki. Clef is someone I expect to see get some pretty decent results just because of Friend Guard pairing up with Calyrex-Shadow being great. But also Regieleki is an interesting mon. Personally, have tested a bit myself, and as a speed control mon, it is pretty solid. And I'm really curious to see where it goes. This Zamazenta here is Iron Defense, no Protect. Very interesting, but I have seen similar stuff. Once again, none of these players are out here rocking Imprisoned Zamazenta, so I do think they are doing it all wrong. But other than that, pretty standard, right? You got the Riley, you got the Incin. They're both very, very good with the Calyrex-Shadow. Of course, you got the Clef there as well to support it, and Aleki in case you need a bit of extra speed control. So, yeah, really, really cool there. We have, is this? No, I thought it was back-to-back Swordfishes. So we have a 5-2 drop here. Zacian plus Miraidon. Very, very interesting here. This just looks like the Arabega team, but you drop Whimsicott for Zacian. Of course, having the dog does give you a pretty quick mon. Obviously, you don't have the Tailwind mode here, but I guess between Miraidon and Zacian, you do have 2 pretty quick mons, and of course the support from Iron Hands and Ogopon as well, and even Giraffe to a certain extent can obviously help enable them. And of course, you also have the Choice Scarf Urshi. But yeah, very, very cool team here. Double Choice is, you know, I'm a big fan of Double Choice. And of course, having things like Ogopon, Hearthflame, and Iron Hands to help you set up a SD Zacian is always pretty damn scary. We also have another Swordfish here. Now, this is actually similar to something I was testing. I believe it was very similar to, I believe, Oliver Eskelin's, I guess, take on Kyogre, where he had, like, Kyogre plus the Roaring Moon stuff. Of course, Landorus, I think, is still an incredibly good mod right now. It is interesting to see Rain Dance here. Like, I get why they've got it. It is just funny. But yeah, obviously, you know, Lando, pretty damn good mod. Probably the second best ground type in the format. The best one if you don't want to run a restricted. Bruxish also getting some shine here is pretty interesting. But I will say, you know, I kind of mentioned earlier, but I do think Grimmsnarl is very good. So having Psychic Fangs here to break that, I do think is very, very cool. And of course, Super Fang as well is very, very interesting, right? It just gives you a way to, you know, lower things down so your Kyogre can kind of pick them up with a Water Spout, which definitely very interesting. And of course, Taunt, very, very good to stop, you know, the opposing Trick Rooms, especially as well when you've got Dazzling so you can't be faked out. So really, really cool team here. I do wish it could have gone further, but yeah, very, very interesting nonetheless. And also another thing, I guess, to mention with Roaring Moon, obviously this is the one that is very good into Calyrex-Shadow, so I do expect to see it get a little bit more play as we go forward. What else here? We basically have like the Arabega team with Grimmsnarl as your screens mon, and then the Urshi Rapid just became a Cali Ice. And yeah, you just have this mode where it's like, hey, my Trick Room mode's really good, but so is my balance mode, right? You can run like double restricted, Grim Ogopon. You can run, but honestly, just anything, right? I'm sure there are matchups where you could drop either restricted, just go hard Trick Room. You probably don't drop Miraidon actually because you want to buff up the Iron Hands, but yeah, this is kind of what I'm I don't want to say expecting to be, you know, the standard going forward. I do expect to see stuff like Miraidon plus Lunala as well. And I do think Lunala on this team takes the Giraffe slot. But yeah, will be interesting to see how it all kind of plays out going forward. But look, it looks like everyone's still opting to go for Choice Specs Terra Fairy, which is definitely interesting, as I did think it would drop just a little bit. But yeah, this is just a very, very strong team. It gives you a very, very impressive Trick Room mode with Cali Ice and Iron Hands. And of course, Giraffe here also helps out a lot with the Calyrex-Shadow. So yeah, really, really cool team there. We do see here a Miraidon Lunala, our first one. Shout outs to my goats here. This is kind of what I expected to see. I kind of do expect to see the Lunala. Dude, I just realized this Lunala doesn't have Trick Room. Yo, what the hell? This is just like offensive Lunala. Okay, that's kind of crazy. Honestly, I don't mind it. Ogopod Wellspring here as well, opting for U-turn, definitely kind of cool. No grass coverage though, but I guess, how does this team hit Groudon? I guess you just Draco it, right? That's the answer. When in doubt, you Draco an electric terrain, I guess. But yeah, no, still really, really cool here to see a Miraidon and Lunala team. And as I said, this is kind of what I expect to see. Like when you run these two, you probably want like Incin and the Iron Hands together because you want double fake out. I still like the Whimsicott here on the team. And the Wellspring is definitely really interesting. I would have expected that to be something like a Urshi Rapid, just because I feel like the team's lacking instant offense, and it's like, yeah, you have fake out, but like I don't know. I feel like the team needs a little bit more damage. But in saying that, Ogopod Wellspring does still hit pretty damn hard. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. What else we have here? We have a couple more teams we'll look at. We have a Koraidon Lunala team. Once again, seeing this, I kind of shit on this core the other day, but this is kind of what I've been seeing, where it's like they play the Power Herb Meteor Beam stuff with this. Obviously, when you've got some fantastic support like Incin, Amoonguss, Ogerpon, Herflame, it does make it a bit easier to run. I'm a bit surprised these Koraidon teams actually aren't running Indeedee, because I do think Indeedee would be really sick on a team like this, because like, one, you stop the fake out cycling, of course, but also two, it gives you that like that AoE that Lunala doesn't really have, right? Like Koraidon, for example, it's a single target mon. Raging Bolt for the most part is single target outside of E-Webs. This team really has no spread damage, right? So because of that, I would have liked to have seen probably a bit of expanding force Lunala, but I mean, look, they still had a really solid result, so I guess they don't necessarily need it. And the team, I mean, like, I guess you've got Helmet, you've got Goggles in Sin. Like, I'm just looking at this, like, you could, trying to think how I would change it if I played it. Probably be like Amoonguss would become Indeedee with, like, Goggles. And then maybe you go, like, Helmet or AV in Sin, but then you have to go, like, AV off the Bolt, and that kind of gets awkward. But nonetheless, cool to see a Koraidon Lunala team here getting some results. And then the final team we'll look at here is Aldridge. Now, shout out Aldridge. This guy has bet against me, or sorry, not bet against me. He's predicted against me every week in the NPAA. And I am 5-1, I think. So yeah, shout out to him. Said I'm going to lose every week, and I prove him wrong. But nonetheless, you know, he's here. Pretty cool team, right? Miraidon, Calyrex-Shadow. Definitely a team up my alley, especially when you have things like the Grimmsnarl and the Urshi Rapid. Once again, seeing Grimmsnarl here is really, really cool. I do think this mon is going to get better and better as the format progresses. But yeah, cool team here. Of course, Landorus giving you that, that ground option, especially good for the mirror as well. Yeah, awesome team there by Aldridge. And congrats to them on a top 16. But yeah, I guess that's basically it. I mean, like, I guess I can quickly look at the metagame as a whole. Calyrex-Shadow, most used mon. Honestly, not that surprising. Urshi Rapid also up there. Koraidon, once again, having a very good win rate. What was the big winner of this event? It was Toxapex, it was Urshi Dark. I mean, Urshi Dark, Pagos actually both had really good showings. But obviously, I do think they were actually paired together quite a bit. But yeah, guys, look, I'm going to end it there, dude. Insane, almost 60% win rate. Crazy. Even Ho is 60%, but I guess it was on the winning team as well. So yeah, kind of makes up for it. But yeah, look, guys, I'm going to end it there. Obviously, not a very, very long one today. A bit shorter than I normally would do. But yeah, as I said at the start, look out for this, right? We've got the big challenge tomorrow where it's got somewhere between probably 250 to 300 players. I'm super excited. I know Wolf Blick did talk about this, and I think he played in it. I know he played Terapagos. I don't think he had a fantastic result, which sucks because that would have been perfect clickbait. But yeah, anyway, that's a conversation for tomorrow. So guys, thank you for sticking around and watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.